This story is very similar to the allegorical novel by William Golding, Lord of the Flies. Boys stranded in the open sea get thrown onto a desert island, but that's where the similarities end. Unlike the characters from The Lord of the Flies, who broke up into warring tribes willing to destroy each other, the teenagers from our story did something completely different. What was it? And did they manage to survive? Watch the video to find out. It all began in June 1966. 6 boys, Sion, Stefan, Kolo, David, Luke, and Mano, aged 13 to 16, studied at a Catholic boarding school on one of the islands of the Tonga archipelago in Polynesia. Tired of the tedious routine and overwhelmed with their thirst for adventure, they decided to run away, stealing a boat and planning on sailing to one of the Fiji Islands or even to New Zealand. Their plan wasn't exactly well thought out. All that the boys took with them were some bananas, a few coconuts, and a gas burner. They didn't even think to stock up on drinking water. On the very first night, the travelers woke up because the wind started blowing stronger and the waves were getting wilder. The boys panicked and began to set a sail, but it was quickly blown away by the stormy wind, while the rudder of the flimsy boat broke. They spent the next 8 days at sea without water. They survived only because they thought to collect rainwater into coconut shells and strictly dosed their intake. Each of them could take 1 sip in the morning and in the evening. On the 8th day, they saw the coast of Atta Island, which had been uninhabited since a slave ship sailed there in 1863 and captured half of the local population into slavery. The rest of the population quickly fled to the mainland. The boys abandoned their broken boat and swam for 36 hours to get to the shore. They were exhausted and clutched at boards and driftwood floating in the water to get at least some rest. An inhospitable island. Atta Island looked a little like a tropical paradise with white sands and palm trees. You could easily see carelessly spending your whole life in their shade. The boys arrived at the mountainous cliff that was over 300 meters high. The birds nesting on the rocks became both food and a source of liquid for the young islanders. They caught the birds and killed them, drinking their blood and eating their meat. They also did some fishing. They couldn't find any other food, nor could they find a way over the cliff. There was no way to start a fire, so they ate their prey raw. Their first refuge for the night was the ledge of a rock. The boys hid under it. It was only a few days later that the boys built a hut from the pieces of wood brought over by the sea. Sion recalls how they were afraid of the surf, always fearing that it might carry them out into the open ocean. The teenagers tried to find their way up, but they were unsuccessful for a long time. Their fight against the elements lasted for 3 months, and it was only around their 100th day that they found a path in the rocks. The boys tried to climb the rocks for 3 days, but each time their attempts failed, and they had to look for another way. Eventually, they did manage to climb up, and what happened next could have been taken by Jules Verne as the basis for his next novel. Friendship and resourcefulness. The boys settled on the top of the island in the mouth of a dormant volcano. That's where the indigenous people of the island once lived. There they found banana palms and feral chickens that had bred in large numbers over 100 years. The teenagers set up a small commune on the island. They had a vegetable garden, hollowed out tree trunks that collected rainwater, a sports field with weights made from scrap materials, a badminton field, chicken pens, and fire that they maintained around the clock. 6 young Robinsons didn't just do whatever they could to try and survive on the island, but also came up with their own rituals and all sorts of entertainment to help them brighten their days and get through the long months of isolation. For example, one of them made an improvised guitar out of a piece of wood, half of a coconut shell, and a wire that they had on the boat, so they started each day with a song and a prayer. Their life was completely different from the one described in William Golding's Lord of the Flies. According to the author, the boys who found themselves on a desert island after a shipwreck would soon split into warring tribes and begin killing each other. But the Tongan teenagers showed remarkable conscientiousness. Their rare quarrels did not lead to animosity because they came up with a protocol they followed in such cases. It obliged the conflicting parties to take timeouts and make peace. When one of the boys, Stefan, fell off of a cliff and broke his leg, the other 5 went down to get him back up and even made a splint from the branches, thanks to which his bones healed and he was able to walk again. And while he was laying down, unable to do his share of the work, the other boys took over for him. The return. The boys were discovered by Peter Warner, who sailed past the island on his ship in September of 1966. Atta Island caught his attention and the navigator decided to take a closer look at it. Approaching the shore, Warner noticed how an almost naked, long-haired young man jumped from a cliff into the water and swam towards him, followed by 5 of his friends. When they were already on board, they told Warner their incredible story, and Warner immediately contacted by radio the authorities of Nuku'alofa, the capital city of the Kingdom of Tonga. After 20 minutes of radio silence, the operator said, almost crying, "Did you find them? All of these boys were considered dead, and a funeral ceremonies were even held. If it's them, it's a real miracle." It would have seemed that now the problems of the young men should have ended, and their families should have celebrated the reunions with their sons who had long been considered dead. However, when they arrived in Nuku'alofa, the travelers were met by police officers and the teenagers were imprisoned on charges of stealing the boat that belonged to one of the fishermen. Fortunately, Peter Warner came to the rescue again by paying the fishermen 150 pounds in damages. Everything ended well. Back on their home island of Ha'afeva, the 6 Robinson were greeted by their parents and almost the entire population, which was only 900 people. Peter Warner became a national hero of the Kingdom of Tonga. He was invited for an audience with the local king, who asked how the state could thank the stranger for saving the boys. The sailor asked for permission to fish for lobsters in the local waters and establish his own business in the archipelago. The king agreed, and Peter moved to Tonga. On the island, he bought a fishing boat and hired a crew, which happened to be the very 6 boys he saved from the island of Atta, after which the boat was named. Their mark in history. This story isn't a fictional one. It has been officially documented, but it isn't widely known. There is a black and white documentary movie that was made a few years after the rescue of the Tongan boys from the island of Atta, in which they returned to the abandoned land where they spent 15 long months and talk about their adventures. There is also an autobiography of Peter Warner that he published in 2019. Thanks to the historian Rutger Bregman, the boys, whose amazing adventure began as in the Lord of the Flies novel, but ended in a completely different way, got talked about again. His new book, Humankind, was published recently, and the story of the 6 teenagers who ended up on a desert island and didn't fight or kill each other, but rather set up a commune based on trust and mutual assistance plays a key role in this book. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, subscribe to our channel. We'll have many more interesting stories for you. Bye!